I wanted to respond to this because I get like comments like this a lot when I do the live. And it says, I don't care about last names. And I'm not speaking for you, but I think just in general, when people say that, I don't think that's true because obviously last names matter. They're part of our identity. And I don't think that men would have been forcing their last names on their children and their wives for thousands of years if last names didn't matter in general. So, it represents your identity, it represents your lineage, it represents your descendants if you have children. And so I think that last names are very important. That's why I did this prompt, this topic, and it's actually my favorite. And that's why it brings up a lot of interesting responses from men, which it represents or is indicative of their feelings about women, typically negative. So you said, think about it. A woman's last name also comes from a man, right? Typically, yes. Typically, her last name comes from a man. The point isn't that the woman's last name doesn't come from a man. The point is that if she gives it to her husband and then potentially her children, if she has them, that then their last name will be coming from a woman because it's her last name. And her last name is typically, if it comes from her father or her mother, but it represents her lineage, her heritage, her ancestry, and then that would be also linked to her children if she has them. So no matter what, a woman has a man's last name. Women don't have last names of their own choosing. They never have, and they never will. So the thing is, nobody has last names of their choosing. Men are assigned their last name at birth, just like women are. So nobody chooses their last name. The only difference is that women, typically through marriage, have been, depending on what time period you're thinking about, whether it was their choice or not, have potentially changed their last names through marriage. So nobody chooses their last name. It's usually assigned at birth. And when you say they never have and they never will, so that's not true. Things change. There are some men who take their wives' last names. There's a man who came on my live, I think it was when I was doing another topic, but he saw this topic and he and his wife created a last name. So there are women who are changing things. So it is possible in the future. And if we don't think about it as important, if we don't talk about it, then it won't change, but it definitely can change. Instead, we can just be treated as equals and called it a day. Now, obviously, I'm not opposed to being treated as equals, but I do think that the way that there is so much identity and importance placed on last names, that there's so much possession and ownership that comes out when I was talking about the interesting things that men reveal about their feelings about women. It denotes to some of them possession, ownership, property of their children, of their wives. And so I'm not saying that it would have that same meaning if women were giving their last names to their husbands and children, but if we change the dynamic, the way that women are viewed in society, I think would change as well. Not solely based on this, but I do think that it would play a role. I think it would have an impact because names mean things. Names literally have meanings. And then especially when you're talking about last names where they are tied to your history, your heritage, your ancestry, and your descendants, it's very important. And so I think that's why it elicits such strong feelings, especially for men, because they feel like they are entitled to pass down their last name to their children and give it to their wife. And women have a right to want the same for their family, to want the same for their husband.